And here's the thing, folks. Have you heard anything about Lot's woman who turns around and looks and is turned into a pillar of salt? How were you taught to understand that? They were told in verse 17, flee for your life. Do not look back or stop anywhere in the plain. Flee to the hills or else you'll be consumed. And then we get this one verse, 26. But Lot's woman behind him looked back and she became a pillar of salt. How have you heard that explained? How have you been told to read that? Have you been told that is a form of, because she didn't obey, that's why God turned her into a pillar of salt? Did you read that as she was how were you taught to read that engagement? I did a season of a podcast called Bible and Modern Literature. And one of the episodes we did was engaging this story, this part about Lot's woman, and a poem called Lot's Wife. And it's written by a Native American person. And what I loved about that poem is how it helped me to see that passage. So I've never really stopped to spend much time with it before. And I had always just had some sort of negative, Lot's woman she wasn't listening. She was told not to, and she did it. And I'd never just sat with that. Like, why would she do that? Why'd she turn around to look? But it was people she lived with. She cared about, even if some of them were cruel. It's not necessarily rubbernecking to watch the disaster, maybe that's it, but it could also be about the fact that she raised her children there, right? And it's a community of people that was not perfect, but was her people, or became her people for a time, and she's worried about them, or she's right. I mean, there's more than one way, is my point, to engage and understand what's going on here. And of course, there's the kind of bizarre ideology about, the saltiness of the Dead Sea, right? That this is trying to explain. There are pillars of salt along the edge of the Dead Sea that are referred to they're called Lot's wife. I mean, it's not a stretch that's what this story is trying to explain. But in a human relationship and human reality and experience kind of a level, she's the most humane and human person in this whole exchange. She's the most compassionate. And she is turned to a pillar of salt. And isn't that lovely if we could look at that and think about, the tears, the saltiness of tears. And she becomes a pile of salt. She just utterly, right, is devastated by the loss of the people she had become close to. The loss of place or the loss of identity. I don't know. I think there's more than one way to look at this. You were taught that she was punished for disobedience. Yeah, me too, Carl. By being turned, always seemed needlessly cruel to me. Indeed, I'm going to affirm that. And yet you are not alone in being taught that, for sure.